Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out tonight to our new investor online workshop. I'm Ferre. I'm here with Stephen Swenson, and we want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us tonight for this free workshop.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. It looks like we've got a lot of people here, so I believe this is going to be a good training.
Yeah. First off, a lot of you may know who we are. Maybe you've watched other videos with us before. Some of you may be very familiar. If we're new to you, we'll talk just for a second about who we are. We've been involved with tax sales for a long time now.
Yeah, pretty much about 20 years. We first got started around 1990, 2000, and back then tax sale investing was quite a bit different. A lot of things have changed since then.
Yeah, well, the internet has had a tremendous impact on how tax sales are conducted, and even how you can perform research, how everything is done. The internet has changed, and that's been part of our learning curve as well. Is not just tax sales, but also how counties are using the internet today, in order to execute tax sales and get rid of their properties.
Yeah, and the way that we first heard about it was initially I was a real estate agent, and my broker invited me to come out to attend the sale, and so that was kind of my first exposure to it. Me and Shade are cousins, and we've grown up together, and I've always had an interest in real estate. And so at that point, we started dedicating everything we could to it, and eventually we created a home study program.
Yeah, we private labeled that through seminar companies for a long time, but starting back in, I don't know, maybe 2016, I think, was when we started taxsalesupport.com, and we've never looked back. We've really we're happy to do that, and that's still what we do. We have tax sales support and the membership program, and we've got a coaching program as well within that, where we work with you more closely, and we love doing that as well.
Yeah, and tonight's topic, what we want to do is we want to go over tax sales 101. So we want to explain, what are tax sales, what are the different methods, what are the different strategies and types of tax sales that take place.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of reasons why. Obviously, if you're here, it's because you already know that tax liens and deeds have something to offer. For some of you, you may know pretty well what they, how they work. And for some of you, they may be pretty new. Really, between tax liens and deeds, we've got a pretty diverse number of investments that we can pursue. We have a combination of both, the opportunity to earn a high interest rate return on a safe investment, or we have real estate opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. So with tax lien certificates, we have that guaranteed interest rate return, a double-digit return, and then with tax deeds, it's really real estate investing. So it gives us the opportunity to really buy property as cheap as any method that we know.
Well, it's hands down, you'll find the cheapest property there anywhere else, because it's one of the few. It's one of the only ways out there where the party selling the property doesn't have an interest in how much it sells for.
Yeah, well, and there's over 4,000 either counties or cities that are offering tax sale properties. So between the 50 states, there's a lot of opportunity taking place.
It's also becoming more and more accessible from home and from the internet. We can do more today than we could 5 years ago, and I think 5 years from now we'll only be able to do more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're seeing that even as of now with the coronavirus, where some of these counties are moving over to online auctions.
Yeah. Now, really, what a lot of it is based around is on property tax, on, I guess, the issuance and the collection of property taxes. They're kind of a part of life. I think they're one of the few taxes that made perfect sense from the get-go. At least if you own property within an area, it makes sense that property owners would if they were going to pay a tax to help fund things in the area, then property ownership is a good way to do it. And so with that in place, it's not like a lot of other things you might pay for in your life with taxes. It's money that is actually going to things that you can see around you every day.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that property taxes actually go to pay for most of the public schools, elementaries, high schools, the police department, the fire department, roads and services throughout the community. And so that's where all of that money, goes to pay for. And so if those property taxes don't happen, then the county has a budget deficit.
Right, and that's really where tax sales come into play. I think at their heart, tax sales are part of the enforcement mechanism that is used, to make sure property taxes are collected. I mean, basically, state laws are what are going to determine how local governments either issue, collect. Any kind of enforcement method that's in place is something that's outlined in state law, but the same laws also set forth punitive measures, everything relating to how the county goes about collecting and enforcing property taxes. And really, tax sales are kind of an important, they're a crucial part of that.
Yeah, exactly. They go to pay for all these services, and suddenly if they don't have that money, they don't have the money to pay for things like schools and police.
Yeah, what it's ultimately about is the county's ability to sell something at the auction to the public so that they can collect money now. That's really what it is about. It's about the county not being forced to wait on anything. It's about them having the power to collect funds that are delinquent now and not being forced to wait. Now, when we get into some of the specifics about how exactly states do this, some of the differences and what we found was we could split it up into some systems that, to make a little bit more sense in terms of the way that state laws were written. What we figured out was that, you could break it down into about 3 systems.
Yeah, exactly. And what those systems are is tax lien certificates, tax deed foreclosures, and something we coined about 15 years ago as tax redemption deeds.
Yeah, redemption deeds. So basically, with the 3 systems that we have there, we have pretty much how property taxes are collected and enforced in every part of the country. Every state uses at least one of these systems. Most states use just one system. So, they either fall into a tax lien, state or a tax deed state. And then there are a handful of states that are kind of this weird hybrid redemption deeds. And then there are a couple of states that use more than one system. They have 2 systems.
Yeah, a state like that would be Florida, where they have both tax lien certificates or tax deeds. And there is some tax lien states where, they will go ahead and eventually, if they have over-the-counter tax liens that don't sell, then they'll go ahead and issue them to deeds.
Yeah, liens can become deeds in some of those states eventually.
So let's get into what are tax liens. A tax lien is a lien that's placed against a property for not paying the property taxes.
Yeah, so essentially in states where tax liens are outlined in state laws, the main method they're going to use, what the county can do is they can issue that lien against the property because of, for the amount of delinquent taxes. Their main purpose in doing that, though, is that it gives them something to sell. They basically can then take that delinquent amount that's owed. So let's say somebody has $1,200 in delinquent taxes owed. The county places lien against the property. They can now sell that lien to the public for $1,200 because it's promising to pay out a set interest rate return.
Yeah, exactly. So an investor will go ahead and pay off those back taxes, and they'll be giving a tax lien on that property. And that lien really has, 2 things that can happen.
Yeah. So essentially, when the county holds their tax sales, what they do, they're holding their lien sale, and they're going to sell off their liens. They are selling these all off to buyers. So 3 things happen on the day of the tax sale. The property itself, the lien is issued against the property, begins accruing interest, and the redemption period begins. So the redemption period is basically that time period that the property owner is given that acts like a grace period where they can't lose their property to foreclosure. But it also acts like a ticking clock for the investor because it represents the time period they have to wait before they can use that lien to foreclose on the property.
Yeah, exactly. And lien holder will be earning an interest rate return until that property owner pays that debt back.
Yeah, which it's accruing over time, essentially. So like any debt, when a person has delinquent property taxes that are owed, they're either going to pay off what they owe or they don't pay off what they owe. Now, if they don't pay off, if they do pay off what they owe, which is what happens the vast majority of the time, people might just be late with their bill but they eventually pay the county what they owe, and they're not just going to be able to pay what they owed before. They're going to have to pay additional penalties and fees because they're late. And ultimately, when that happens, it's what we call redemption.
Yeah, exactly. So in that first scenario, the property owner will go ahead and pay the county. The county will go ahead and cut a check to the investor, and at that point, the investor will go ahead and reinvest that money into more tax liens.
Right. Basically, it's as simple as getting a check in the mail. This is the easiest form of investing ever, in terms of what you need to do with the investment most of the time. 95% of the time, you're just going to end up getting a check in the mail whenever the property owner, decided to eventually pay off this amount that's owed.
Yeah, now if that doesn't happen and the owner doesn't pay, that's where this foreclosure right comes into play. And the investor can go ahead and foreclose on the property and become the new property owner.
Yeah, so if it's a 2-year redemption period, essentially, the investor might have to wait for 2 years, but at the end, as soon as that 2-year anniversary mark comes, they can use that lien to begin foreclosing on the property. And in foreclosing, it's either going to get foreclosed on, or it will get paid off. One way or the other, the results will either be redemption or foreclosure.
Well, and this is the reason why big banks have been investing into tax liens for decades, is because, most of the time they're going to make a good interest rate return on their money, and occasionally they're going to get the property. But it really does, it really is one of the safest investments, and you know exactly what your interest rate is going into it. Now, you don't know how long you're going to be earning that interest, but hey, I'm going to be earning 14% or 16 or 18% on this lien until the property's paid off.
Right. So, tax liens, basically the vast majority of them redeem because most people pay off their taxes. It's not really a strategy you're going to pursue for acquiring property. It's more of a strategy that you pursue with long-term funds to earn a high interest rate safely.
Yeah. So here are some tax lien examples that were purchased by some of our members. You can see that these tax liens were actually purchased over the counter, so they were able to get them at the highest interest rate, which we'll explain in a little bit. And each one of them has a pretty good, what we call lien to value ratio.
Yeah, which ultimately that's kind of what makes it for a good lien.
Yeah, exactly. You can see the lien on the top far left was paid for $620. It had a $44,000. The property on next to it $500 and was worth over $50.
Yeah, so these liens here, they were set to earn 14% annually, and what we're looking at there is the amount that the investor's paying versus the value of the property, because it's utilizing the property as collateral. So that's basically where your investment security comes into play. And all you have to ask yourself as an investor is, what's the property owner here most likely to do? Are they going to pay it off, or are they going to walk away from this by any chance? And in almost every case, of course, they're going to pay it off. They're going to pay it off at some point. But if they didn't, would it be worth foreclosing? And the answer is, in all these cases, it would be absolutely.
Yeah. Say one of these homes was owned by somebody that passed away and didn't have any family, and it just goes ahead and ends up going to the tax sale or to the tax lien. You buy that lien and foreclose on it. At that point, you're going to become the new owner.
Right. Yeah. Which that does happen, and it happens on some properties with odd circumstances and things surrounding it. Things that end up in the tax sale are not always straightforward.
Yeah, so really, the way you look at it, the worst case scenario, you're going to be making a great return, which is going to happen most of the time. But if not, you've really hit a home run. Yeah,
really. They are a really great investment in that way. And for a long time, I think banks, big financial institutions, they were able to kind of have a heyday just by showing up and sending a lot of representatives to some of the live auctions.
Yeah, so if you want to earn interest rate, tax liens is going to be the best method for you. But if you want property, if you want to acquire real estate, tax deeds is the strategy for you.
Yeah, which tax deeds are a little bit different, and again, it comes down to how state law has this set out. But in counties within tax deed states, those counties basically have a redemption period that they're required to wait. So it might be a period of 3 years. It might be a period of 4 years. It could, in Utah, we have a period of 5 years. Where essentially they're going to make efforts to collect it, but they're going to have to wait out that time period. But when it expires, though, the county can initiate foreclosure. and foreclose on the properties. That's really what happens. Is the county has the power to foreclose, and then when they do, they have to hold a tax sale to sell the properties.
Yeah, like Shade said, the county doesn't sell tax lien certificates on the property. They're just going to wait for that redemption period to expire, then foreclose on the property. So when they're offering the property to sell, you're buying the property itself. You're buying the actual deed.
Yeah, and its starting price is going to be the total amount owed in delinquent taxes, penalties, and fees. But that is usually not that much. If you consider what annual property taxes are and how many years the redemption period is in the state, you can get a rough idea about how much opening bid might be.
Yeah, many times it's between 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be higher than that, sometimes it can be lower, but usually around 10% of the value is going to be around that opening bid.
Yeah. So basically, the county, again, it takes such a long time that not that many properties end up being foreclosed on. It has to go for a long time without paying property taxes before it will be foreclosed on. But once it does, the county has no interest in owning property. They really just want to get a new property owner into it so that they can start collecting property taxes again. And so essentially, that's really where the county's power lies here, is in the ability to foreclose on these properties. And then as investors, though, we can buy these types of properties starting out at what's owed in taxes.
Yeah, they'll go ahead and offer it at an auction. The highest bidder is going to win the property and become the new property owner. Now, here's a couple examples of some tax deed properties that were purchased by our students. The property on the right there was actually a commercial property. You can see it's actually next to a Wendy's. Was picked up for $1,800. I think it had a value of around $20,000, maybe 21, something like that. And he ended up selling it for $12,000, making a good $10,000 profit.
Yeah. Well, he was able to sell that wholesale, really too. So he ended up doing pretty well on that.
Yeah, in fact, both of these properties were actually sold as wholesale.
Yeah.
The property on the left was nice 27 acres picked up for $30,000. And this investor actually ended up selling it very quickly to another investor or another buyer who wanted to buy it for an additional $50,000.
Well, it was a guy that wanted to put his house there. And so he had been looking into the property and understood exactly where it was, what was going to be needed in order to make it usable. And a lot of things about that, the buyer could have, our coaching student could have taken it through quiet title to try to get the full value out of it, because it was worth $200,000.
Yeah.
But really what made the most sense there was to take the quick transaction, because it was going to take another investment of at least $30,000 in order to get that maximum value out of it.
Yeah, you had to build a road into the property and things like that. So in that scenario, it was better for him to just go ahead and take, the $80,000 and have that much more money to put into more auctions and more property.
Yeah.
So the third strategy is what we call redemption deeds. And redemption deeds are really kind of a tax deed in a way, with a redemption period attached to it.
Yeah, they are. They're kind of a mix halfway between the two. So they are essentially tax deeds, but they may have a redemption period attached to them. And what that means is, normally with a tax deed, when you buy it, as soon as you've received the deed, you would have the power or ability to sell that property. But with a redemption deed, you're not going to have that immediate power to sell it. The redemption period is going to have to expire before you'll have the ability or the power to sell it. And so they're a little bit more long term in the way that a lien is. You might have to wait out a time period before you can actually list it for sale.
Yeah, so it has that redemption period where the property owner can come back and get the property in redemption deeds, but it bids and sells like a tax deed. In fact, the county will go ahead and issue a deed. It just won't be fully recorded until that redemption period is passed. Now with redemption deeds, unlike a tax lien where the redemption periods tend to be longer, 2 to 4 years, most redemption deeds have a shorter redemption period, 6 months to a year, except for in a couple of cases like in Texas on homestead properties or farmland, they give a 2-year redemption period. Also one thing about Texas is the fact that you can actually have ownership rights during that redemption period.
Yeah, the laws vary somewhat between some of these states with the rights that they will give you during that time period. So in some cases, they'll give you the right to possess the property in Texas, but other redemption deed state may not give you possession rights during that redemption period.
Yeah, another thing that makes redemption deeds different is you will earn a redemptive penalty versus an interest rate return. So in a tax lien certificate, if you earn 18%, that'll break out to 1.5% per month.
Yeah, it accrues slowly over that time period.
Yeah, but with the redemption deed, if you bought a property on Tuesday at the tax sale auction in Texas, and the owner came in the very next day and redeemed it, you would get a 25% penalty on your money. So when we're buying redemption deeds, unlike a tax lien where we have a 5% chance of getting the property, with the redemption deed, it's probably closer to 50%, maybe even more.
Yeah,
a chance of you actually owning the property.
Yeah, whereas you can invest in liens and understanding that they're not really about acquiring any kind of real estate most of the time. Most of the time, it's just going to redeem. You definitely have a much higher chance of acquiring the property with a redemption deed, because you think about it, it's going to be fairly expensive for the individual that is, that's delinquent on their property taxes and that has already allowed it to get to this point where the property is sold at auction, because in addition to what they owed before, they're also going to be paying the penalties and things in order to pay off that, for instance, the 25% that you would end up making on it with your money. So if you paid $10,000 for the property and it redeemed the next day, you would get a check back for that 10,000 plus the 25% of that. So that's on an annual basis in Texas. Again, it's not the only redemption deed state, but there's not too many of them.
Yeah, and because we have a higher chance of owning the property, we're going to do a lot more due diligence and research before bidding and buying the property, because chances are we're actually going to own it. So just like a tax deed, it's going to go through a normal sales process. They're going to do the foreclosure, offer it at an auction. But the difference is if that property owner goes ahead and pays back the back taxes and the penalty, the investor is going to be able to get that return of 20 to 25% return on their money, but the property is going to go back to the original owner.
Yeah, so it's not the kind of thing you want to invest money into. In other words, just because you can take possession rights of the property in Texas doesn't mean you would want to sink money into it really necessarily, because you're not going to be able to get the majority of it back.
Yeah, the only thing that you could possibly get back would be basic maintenance. And so you're not going to do any rehabs, anything like that until the redemption period is passed. But in a state like Texas, if it was something like a structure, you could rent the property out during that time frame.
Yeah.
You do have that ownership right. You're just not going to want to sink a lot of money into it, because there's still that chance the property
you might have to tell people to get out.
Yeah, that's true. Here's some example of properties that were coming up for sale in one of the Texas auctions. You can see the opening bids start around $3,000 and go up to $30,000 for the opening bid, depending on the value of the property.
Yeah, another advantage though, in some of the places like that, at least in Texas, they do a lot of sales there. So they have sales monthly. In a lot of the places there.
Yeah, especially if the county has enough inventory. If the county is a smaller county, doesn't have as high a population, they may do it 4 times a year.
Yeah, as often as needed. Kind of thing.
If it's a bigger county, they may do it, every single month or 11 months out of the year.
Yeah. Now, outside of some of those basics there about the different systems, tax liens, tax deeds, or redemption deeds, there are really only a couple of ways that you can buy tax liens or deeds. It really kind of comes down to either auction or over the counter.
Yeah. Now with auction, that actually breaks down into 2 types of auctions, either a live auction where you attend the auction in person, or an online auction. Now with the live auction, this is the most, the oldest way, and I guess until the coronavirus was probably still the most common way counties used to conduct their tax sales.
Yeah, I would say it was still the most common, although Corona has thrown a wrench into that, because a lot of these counties that only had live sales suddenly found themselves unable to conduct their regular auctions, to collect money owed to them. I think they were getting money somewhere else though.
Yeah, well, with the live auctions, you know, it still is a great way to acquire property. So I hope that they'll, you know, will eventually be able to still attend live auctions, because the one thing about a live auction is you're limited just to the competition there locally. Unlike an online auction where, you know, anyone in the country can bid on those properties, when you do attend a live auction, you're just limited to that competition, which usually gets you better deals.
Yeah, if you have a chance to attend, for instance, like a live auction, a live tax deed auction in some little county, go there, you know, and do some research on the properties, because there could be some fantastic deals to come out of it.
Yeah, and I do think that, you know, in just a matter of time, they'll start holding some of these live auctions again.
I hope so. You know, it seems like a relic of the past.
This here is just an example of a property that was picked up. It's actually that building lot you can see right there past the basketball court that was picked up at a live auction.
Oh, sorry, let me go back there. I thought that was attached to it.
It was about just under half an acre, was picked up for $3,300 and had a market value of 60. And that's kind of what I mean by getting some of those opportunities where you're just competing with the local investors there. And if there's enough property, you can really get some pretty good deals.
Yeah, the winning bid was probably pretty close to the opening bid too.
Yeah, I think the opening bid was like, you know, $3,000 or something.
Yeah, so, you know, some fantastic opportunities there if you can attend live auctions. But online auctions are becoming increasingly popular. You know, we have, you know, we've seen just a pretty rapid growth. I mean, the first online auctions, you know, when 20 years ago, there were some online auctions, but they were brand new.
Yeah, well, probably not even 15 years ago, really.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them have come about in recent years. Fortunately, the nice thing about these online auctions is they generally make it pretty easy to gather a lot of information that you might normally have to hunt down.
Yeah, a lot of them will have links directly back to the county records. They may even include things like photos in some of the online auctions, and it makes the researching process a lot easier than getting a list off a PDF or Excel document and then going through and researching the list that way.
Yeah, they are quite easy to use. In some cases, they've got standalone websites. You know, in some cases, you know, they've got, you know, some of the sites are really easy to use. In fact, it's amazing just how many different providers there are now.
Yeah, and there's some big providers like Real Auction, Grand Street Group, Bid for Assets that provide auction services for lots of different counties. Like Real Auction provides, you know, auction, both tax lien and tax deed auctions for Florida and Arizona and Maryland and, you know, a bunch of different areas, Ohio and Texas.
Yeah.
You know, so and they're constantly expanding, and they're kind of competing against each other as well, which, you know, and they're constantly looking for business. So, which is actually increasing the amount of counties that are moving over to online auctions.
Yeah. In fact, here are a couple of examples of properties that our coaching students bought at online auctions here in the last about year or so. And you know, they're both single-family homes, you know, that you can see, you know, in different locations.
Yeah, exactly. So property on the left was picked up for about $6,200, has a value of around 60, you know, over $50,000 potential profit. The property, the white home there, was picked up for about $8,500. It was worth just under $90,000 and had potential profit as well. In fact, the one on the right, they ended up flipping to a neighbor, made a good profit on that one. And the property on the left was purchased by one of our coaching students, and he's actually in the process of renting it out.
Now, aside from auctions, whether they be live or you know, online, over the counter is the other option, and there are some advantages associated with this as well. Essentially, when we say over the counter, what we're talking about is when counties hold auctions, anything that's left over, they either can hold another subsequent sale, or they can wait until next year's auction, or they can offer them to the public directly. You know, so they can offer over the counter, and that's really what it means, is available from the county after the sale.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of different names that they can use for over the counter. You know, it could be list of lands or assignment purchasing or repository list. There's all these different names, but
yeah, forfeited land commission. They got all sorts of crazy names.
But they're all the same thing. They're available tax liens or deeds that are available after the sale that didn't get purchased. And one misconception people have with over-the-counter tax liens or deeds is that it's all useless junk.
Yeah. In fact, I think we get that a lot of times. In fact, people will look at some list and be like, oh, this is all junk. This is, or they automatically look at it and they'll picture themselves trying to live there, and they'll be like, oh, this is terrible. But that's really not so much how we look at this stuff. For us, it's really all about the prices that we can pay for property, how much it costs, how much value it has. And I mean, no doubt there's junk in over-the-counter lists, but there's also, nice properties. You just have to know, how to distinguish between the two.
Yeah, well, and let's say you're having a live auction somewhere and there's only so many investors there with so much money, they can't possibly buy all those properties. So they're automatically going to be good properties that get put on that over-the-counter list. Yeah,
there are a lot of counties out there that are just physically inaccessible for people. They're not very close to airports or to, you've got to travel a long distance, just to get to them.
Yeah, and that's one of the advantages of over-the-counter is that you don't have to travel. And with the internet now and the online tools that are available, you can do a lot of that research just from the comfort of your home.
Yeah. Our students buy a lot of property over the counter. In fact, what's nice about it is you're not under the same time frame you are with the auction where you're competing directly with people. You can kind of pick stuff out, but you can also pick stuff up for just what's owed in delinquent taxes, and in some cases even less.
Yeah, here's a couple of examples of properties that were picked up again by members of our coaching program. The property on the right was an area in the country where you can actually submit offers on property for less than the taxes owed. So I think this property had almost $1,000, $1,200 in back taxes, and she was able to pick it up for $100. Ended up, sending out letters to the neighbors, letting them know it was available, and sold it for a good profit, making $2,800 off her investment.
Yeah, well, the reality is there are places in this country where counties are sitting on huge inventories of land, of just vacant or raw land. In some cases, there could be buildings there, but they can have properties with improvements, but tons and tons of land, and it can be acquired in some cases. They just want a new owner in it.
Yeah, well, if you're looking at that perfect, beautiful home with the white picket fence that was built in the 2000s, you're not going to find that at the over-the-counter list. You may find that in an upcoming auction, a nice newer home, and those come through all the time.
But everybody's going to be trying to buy that same thing when you do, huh?
Yeah, but you're not going to find that on the over-the-counter list. You can find homes that need to be fixed up and cleaned up and be profitable, but there's huge amount of opportunity in just learning how to buy and sell land at the beginning as you gain the experience.
Yeah, in fact, tons and tons of advantages associated with it. Now, the COVID virus has had a weird effect on tax sales, something we've never witnessed before. I mean, we've never seen anything that shut down the normal schedule of tax sales and the way they were conducting it. And now we've got some counties that have we don't know exactly what they're doing with their sales, other than they just basically called them off.
Yeah. Well, even taking Texas, for example, and some of those counties that have auctions every month, if they've had to hold off those auctions, there's going to be a lot of backed up inventory. And so there's, around 6 to 8 months of unsold inventory that needs to be offered. Now, counties are adjusting to the pandemic, by setting new auction dates or moving over to online auctions. But we really think it's going to be a pretty good opportunity for investors over the next 6 months to a year.
Well, when you combine the way that the opportunities are kind of building up, and also the way that a lot of individuals have, they lost money, or have a lot of people have lost money, over the last 6 months, thinking about all the lockdowns and everything associated with it. So that also could help feed into creating, more opportunities. But really, the next 6 to 12 months could be an excellent time to be involved.
Yeah, because you're going to have all of the current tax sales that would be taking place, plus you're going to have all of this backed up inventory where counties have been unable to sell their property. And so that's going to give a lot of opportunity. But in addition to just doubling the inventory over the next, year, 6 months to a year, from what we've seen, the competition has drastically decreased. Especially in certain areas where we wouldn't even try looking in those areas anymore to participate in the auction just because it was so competitive. There's a lot of other places we could go to get deals.
Yeah, a lot of auctions have become too competitive, and fortunately, we've seen some of that cut back quite a bit since this started.
Yeah, we've seen deals picked up in counties where you may not have got a good deal for the last couple of years. We're starting to see good deals within those areas again.
Yeah, so yeah, I think the timing for it is definitely really good for anybody that's looking to get started right now.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we're here where things will start getting better, and counties are already needing to adjust to it because they need to offer these tax sales to bring in that additional income.
Yeah. Now, if you're wondering how you can get started, part of that is about deciding what kind of investment you're after, whether you want to invest into tax liens or whether you want tax deeds, or whether you're looking to invest into something like, redemption deeds. That's part of the challenge sometimes. Maybe you're trying to invest in your own local area, and it's about learning how exactly that area operates and the system they use there. Whatever it is, it's not rocket science once you can gather a list and start doing research on properties.
Yeah, so really the first step is getting educated, and you guys are doing that even here on the call tonight. You can, there's so much information out there, you can start educating yourself, but once you feel like you have a foundation, like Shade said, you can go ahead and pick an area to get started, start researching that list, and then once you've researched that list, you're gonna be ready to essentially bid on those tax liens or deeds at the auction or over the counter.
Yeah, which, really, depending on the buying method, if it's bidding at auction, that's become very simple to do, especially with the online auctions now. If it's over the counter, then you don't even have to worry about bidding. You basically can just work out payment arrangements with the county.
Yeah, exactly. And once that happens, you purchase the property, then it's just a matter of cashing in the profits. Now, that could be through a tax lien certificate redeeming and you getting your interest rate return and then putting that money back into more property, or that could be through buying a tax deed and putting it on the market, turning around and selling and making a profit that way.
And one of the questions that we have is actually a great question. And somebody's wondering if you can do all of this with your smartphone. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is going through county websites and through record search tools for county records. And so we spend a fair amount of time going through county records and also using a lot of different sites. I wouldn't say it's impossible, because some people I've seen are great at using but for the average person, it's going to be hard to do on a smaller app. In fact, for us, really, to make things easier, we like to do it from a computer where we have multiple monitors, just because we need more real estate in order to be able to see just everything going on. And we have to use a mouse generally, because touchpads are too difficult. We end up doing a lot of right clicking, a lot of stuff we have to have a mouse for.
Well, and it also depends on what type of investment you're looking at. Let's say that you're looking to just do tax liens at some online auction in Florida or something like that through Real Auction. Well, you might be able to go on there and research it and bid on the auction that way. But if you're going to be doing high-level due diligence, like Shade said, you're going to be pulling up multiple pages, maps, lots of different research through county record information, and it is possible, but it will be it'll definitely be more difficult.
Yeah. Now, another question here is, does Florida have over-the-counter? And the answer is yes. Florida has over-the-counter liens and over-the-counter deeds, but that doesn't necessarily, tell you everything there. So the Florida liens that are there, some of them can be great liens, but when you buy Florida liens, it has to be done generally shortly after the auction or at the auction, because if if you wait too long and you get into some of the junk liens that are out there, there's a lot of liens in Florida that are junk liens because they're placed against properties that are upside down or underwater. There are a lot of liens. For instance, there are liens you can buy in Florida over the counter lists that where if you bought it, you basically lost your money.
Yeah, so the answer that the best time to get the over-the-counter liens in Florida is going to be directly after the sale. There is probably still good over-the-counter liens, and if you can find some counties that didn't have online auctions, that's going to increase your chances of there still being good liens. And there's probably still good liens on some land and things like that you can buy. But like Shade said, there's a problem in Florida where they can essentially have up to 7 years worth of back taxes, and so some of these properties that you do find on there will have 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 7 years, up to 7 years worth of back taxes.
Yeah, they can have 7 other liens against them. Yeah.
So let's say that we're looking at a $10,000 building lot that maybe had an $800 lien on it. Well, at $800 on a $10,000 lot, you still might be okay. Somebody's going to want to pay that off. If not, you bought this property for under 10 cents on the dollar. But then you look into it and there's a lien for $1,000, a lien for $1,500, and a lien for $1,800, a lien for $2,200, and there's 7 years worth of back tax liens on that property. And now to foreclose on that property, you're going to have to pay off all of the delinquent taxes. And that's one thing we should probably mention with tax liens is when you go to foreclose, if there's additional back taxes, you're going to have to pay that back taxes to go ahead and foreclose on the property.
Well, one of the things that the lien does, liens have a tremendous amount of power, and when a lien's placed against a property, it prevents the transfer of ownership. So you can't transfer ownership when you've got this lien placed against your property. The only way you can do that is basically to pay it off, to have it removed. It's important, I think, that you get it paid off.
Yeah. Now, because Florida's a little bit different, they'll have both tax liens and tax deeds, and so the foreclosure actually isn't done by you. You fill out a deed application, and the county does the foreclosure and actually sends it up to the deed sale. And whoever buys the tax deeds will then at that time pay off the lien holders by that opening bid amount. So they'll start that opening bid with the back taxes plus, let's say if you were making 16.5% on your lien, plus your 16.5%.
Yeah, essentially, instead of the lien automatically going to the lien holder at the end of that redemption period, like it does in most states, the county just sells the property at auction and uses the proceeds to pay off the lien holders. But yeah, essentially that was an important point though before. If you're going to foreclose on a lien, you've got to plan on paying off any other liens that exist against the property because they all have to be paid off in order to foreclose.
Yeah, in fact, when we get into some of the trainings through our membership program or through even our coaching, we'll go through and talk about, how to research those different things, how to research the back tax liens on the property and make sure that you know exactly what that total is. So that if you do foreclose on the property, you'll know how much money you need to do the foreclosure. Now, chances are you're not going to have to. Most of the time, those liens are going to get paid off, but you want to get an idea of what is that total amount that's going to cost if that comes to that.
Yeah, now there are some great questions. Like for instance, I saw, for an online auction, how do you check the condition of the property? So if you are looking, if you're trying to for instance, if it's a tax deed auction you're dealing with, and there's improvements there, then you have to have somebody do an on-site evaluation. You can't just buy it sight unseen. And so buying improved property or structures, things like that, there is the challenge there that you can't just go off of whatever you have online. That doesn't really work. If there's not improvements, then it's a little bit different story because there's only so much about the land that can change.
Yeah, so with structured properties, we're either going to go out to the property ourselves or we're going to send somebody out there to take current photographs of the property before buying it. The one mistake you don't want to make is just assume that the home looks like it does on the Google Street View or something like that, you know, and trust that, because within that time frame, a lot could change on the property that we'll want to get a current photo, current view of the property before deciding if we're going to bid on it.
Oh, and Brandon, when you were asking, you know, what does it mean to know the total amount of taxes outstanding when it goes? So what it's called the roll up. And when we go to buy a lien in Florida, part of what we want to know is we want to look and see, like for instance, we're interested to know, is this lien that we're buying a first year tax lien against this property, or is it not a first year lien? You know, is it something other than that? And so we'll always look into some of the tax history so that we can see exactly how much is outstanding on the property, because if that redemption period expires, then whatever is outstanding in taxes is what's going to have to be paid in order to foreclose on it. And so Florida's a little bit different, but that's essentially how it works in Florida. We check the roll-up so that we can avoid buying anything that has you know, too many excess liens.
Yeah, and one point I want to make about when we're talking about doing on-site evaluations, this is really going to apply with tax deeds. You know, if we're looking at a tax lien, you know, chances are we're not going to own the property. So if we see a home, we're not going to send somebody out there to view the property on a tax lien
sight unseen.
Yeah, but with tax deed properties, with structures in particular, we're going to go out and get a current view.
Another good question is now Jerry had a question about being able to invest a large amount in liens. You know, and I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how doable it is. Because
it's gonna be doable through the auction.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily through over the counter. You could, you know, but it would really be hitting up the Florida sales directly after the over the counter sale. Otherwise, you're probably going to be best through one of the online auctions or something like that.
Yeah. Now, and Renee was asking about what about an IRS lien? So IRS liens are interesting. They are, you know, they're first position liens, just like tax liens are. But essentially what that means is in most states, when the property goes through the foreclosure process, it's not necessarily going to wipe out something like an IRS lien. The IRS lien will still be attached there to the property. But it's really not too big of a deal for investors. Well, I guess it could be a big deal if you don't know what's going on with it. But if you buy a property that has an IRS lien, essentially what will happen is you'll need to send out a notice to the IRS notifying them about the purchase. And from then there, the IRS has a set time frame to kind of decide whether they're going to pursue their lien against the property or whether they're going to let it go. And if they let it go, then they, you know, they relinquish any claim they have to it. If they're going to pursue it, then you're going to get your money back.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. When it comes to the tax foreclosure process, regardless if that's a tax deed foreclosure being done by the county or an investor that's doing a foreclosure on a tax lien certificate they've gone through, that judicial foreclosure process is going to eliminate things like judgments, mortgages, non-governmental liens. The one thing it won't erase is some type of governmental lien. Now, an IRS lien is going to be a more rare type of lien. We're not going to see those as much as we're going to see something like a city lien. You know, something like a nuisance lien. If let's say that they had to send somebody out to clean up the yard or to cut the grass or something like that, then there could be some type of city lien on the property, but that's something that we're going to research before buying the property.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that we look for when we're trying to decide what to buy. So if you do want to get started, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can become a member of Tax Sale Support. That's a pretty affordable way to, I think, you know, to get training and lists and to be able to figure out how it works. But also beyond that, we also have a one-day online workshop that we are going to be putting on here in about a month.
Yeah, we traditionally have done 3-day workshops several times a year in different areas for our students, but because of Corona, we haven't had the ability to do that. So what we decided to do was to put on a 1-day workshop, which will kind of be a condensed version of our 3-day training, where we'll go over and teach about, you know, how to find these properties and how to research these properties. We've kind of told you about them, showed you how to do it, but you know, explain to you what's available, but actually the one-day workshop will take you through and show you how this is done.
Yeah, so really, whichever one you would like, or really for people that join it, there's basically a discount for members anyway, so it makes sense to become a member and then to be able to do it for a lower price too.
Yeah, exactly. And with the membership, you can cancel at any time. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and so you can use the membership. Now with the membership, that's going to give you access to all of our tax sale lists, all of our training manuals and books that'll go through and explain roll-up and all of those different questions that you guys have. But we also have a weekly webinar that we do each week on different tax sale topics. So each week you'll have a chance to either participate live or listen to the replay of trainings on all of these different topics.
Yeah, so yeah, basically that's everything we had to cover here for tonight. But we and you guys had some great questions too. We appreciate your participation in this, and really we would love to help. If you want to get started, we would yeah, come and join us at Tax Sale Support. Become part of our support. You hear me say that there? Become part of our membership program, and that way we can participate with you in the weekly webinar. And really, it's I think the best way for people to get started here, especially if you're not sure what you want to do.
Yeah, one thing to add about that one-day workshop is anyone who registers for the one-day workshop is going to get a follow-up strategy session with one of our coaches. So once you've attended that workshop, you're going to have an idea of what to do, and then we're going to go ahead and set you up with the strategy session, a bonus strategy session with one of our coaches to help you implement those strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, thanks for sticking with us here to the end. We will, we are going to hold this again. I think we'll have the next free one in about 6 weeks.
Yeah, and then we'll also be putting this out on a replay on YouTube, and we'll send you guys the link to it. So we appreciate you guys attending, and we hope that we can meet some of you guys here at the one-day workshop, the one-day online workshop.
Thank you so much. We'll see you then.